Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een amma ba'd fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem bismillahir rahmanir rahim fankihu ma taba lakum minan nisa قال الله تبارك وتعالى في مقام آخر ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون قال النبي صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم النكاح من سنتي فمن رغب عن سنتي فليس مني صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, first of all, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His blessings and His tawfiq, for allowing us to come together to learn something about His deen and to learn about important matters related to our life, in particular our mu'amalat. And such mu'amalat which are a significant part of our everyday lives, relating to relationships, especially through a union which is a sacred union known as nikah. And inshallah, this two-part series related to this important topic, we're going to be covering some important aspects of it, nikah as well as talaq, marriage and divorce. Although it's a vast subject and there's many angles that this subject can be spoken about, many angles taken and spoken about from various aspects of it. It's not a topic that can be covered in 2 lessons, but what we want to do is we just want to give you a flavor of some of the content as well as some important matters related to it, and especially in this summer months. It's the wedding season. A lot of people are getting married. As Imam, we're called to a lot of nikahs during this period of time. So I thought it's important. One, a lot of people are unaware of the process of nikah, what takes place, how is nikah conducted, what are the things they need to be aware of, what are the integral parts of nikah, how to be prepared on the day itself, what are the certain rituals that take place, things related to the mahar, the dowry, the bridal gift, jahez, and all of these things, that some things are cultural, some things are shari'i. And at the same time, we also want to look at some of the roles and responsibilities of both spouses and certain miscellaneous issues which are related to nikah. And then in the second part, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be looking at talaq and divorce. And the reason for that also is because a lot of people are unaware, and there's a high rise in the cases of or in the rise of divorce cases. And unfortunately, this is also happening within our Muslim community. And I can tell you firsthand, as being Imam, that most of the queries that we get, most of the phone calls that we get, are all related to these 2 matters, marriage and divorce. In terms of divorce, we're finding a lot of sisters ringing in to find out how we can get a khula. A lot of brothers are ringing in as well. I pronounced talaq to my wife, I pronounced divorce, and I did it angrily. I was not in the right mind. Oh, I've said it 3 times, or I've said it this many times. Is my marriage still valid? So it's important that we're aware of these issues so that we don't find ourselves in a position that we are now regretting, and now we have to turn to other people to resolve those matters for us. But because we can't talk about all of them in one session, talaq itself is a complete subject, and nikah itself is a complete subject. So therefore we thought we'll do this as a 2-part. Although I've condensed this, I did deliver this as a 4-part series, but I've tried to condense it as much as I can to cover some of the main parts. And I also want to give some time at the end for Q&A. We must also remember, and I've said this often whenever we've done a session, that there are certain things, the knowledge of it is an obligation upon us. Fardul Ain and Fardul Kifaya. Fardul Ain is that knowledge which becomes personally obligatory. It becomes a personal obligation for everyone to learn. And this refers to those acts of worship that each and every single one of us have to fulfill as Muslims. For example, we pray 5 times a day. To learn about the 5-time prayers and the issues related is a personal obligation. Zakat is a personal obligation. Hajj is a personal obligation. So to learn about them, fasting in the month of Ramadan, personal obligation, this ibadah, so we have to, the knowledge of it, to learn about it is also a fard, in order to perform it correctly and perfectly. Similarly, if you are to undertake something, then you must also have the knowledge of it as well. So for example, marriage, because you will be undertaking nikah, if you are going to get married, it becomes an obligation upon you to know the matters surrounding it. So it becomes a fardul ain then to learn about it. And similarly, getting married, at the same time, you also need to have the knowledge of talaq and divorce as well. So it becomes a personal obligation, because you are now undertaking this, and in order to perform the nikah correctly, and then to live a life in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Sharia, of the Islamic law and Islam deen, and at the same time knowing when, or if people want to separate, things are not working out, or how to avoid going down that route of talaq and divorce and trying to make things right. This is also an obligation upon the people to learn about. And certain things are fardul kifaya, for example, communal obligation, to become an expert in these things, to become a scholar in these things. If a few people fulfill that, learning about it and becoming experts in it, and then helping others, then that fulfills the obligation of the community, and that responsibility is lifted from them. But not becoming an expert, but rather knowing the basics, is a personal obligation. So this is why these matters are very, very important. So I'm just going to take you through what we will be covering in this session. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the meaning of nikah, the virtues of it, the purpose of marriage in Islam, what is mahram and non-mahram, who are your marriageable kin and who are your unmarriageable kin, who can you get married to and who you can't get married to. The nikah ceremony, what takes place, and the walima, the dowry, which is the mahar, forced and arranged marriages. This again is a contentious and an issue which sometimes is brought up by people who want to show Islam in a negative light, and roles and responsibilities of both spouses, and then some miscellaneous issues regarding that. And inshallah, we're going to try as best as possible to cover all of these before Salatul Maghrib. If I do go quickly through some of these things, it's because of the time restraint. If there's something you don't understand, feel free to ask the questions. And if there is some clarification to be made, if you want to ask whilst everyone present, or if you want to ask privately, you can do so, inshallah, after Maghrib Salah. I will be here, so we can do that, inshallah. So this is what we will, inshallah, cover in today's session. In terms of the talaq one, because this is for next week, so inshallah we'll cover the talaq issues, the divorce matters next week, inshallah ta'ala. So first of all, what is the meaning of nikah? So nikah is, obviously we understand it to mean Islamic marriage, yeah? But nikah itself, literally it means a union, literally it means a coming together of two people, marriage. And in Shari terms, it is actually an aqd. It is a contract. It is a agreement. It's a contract, it's an agreement between two people. And in our deen, the two people are a man and a woman, a male and female. Okay, and that's important to, to be completely without any sort of hesitance to think that this aqd of marriage can happen between the same gender or between the same people, male and male or female. This is completely prohibited in our deen, completely forbidden in Islam, just as it is forbidden in the other faiths as well. Obviously, due to the recent rise in this culture, in this lifestyle, but Islam and other religions, we share the same principles of marriage is between a man and a woman. So this is a contract, it's an aqd. And what does it mean by aqd is where you agree with one another, and that's what nikah is. You agree, you make a contract, you make an agreement with each other. And you make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a witness upon this. Obviously this happens in front of people where you agree to marry one another, but ultimately you are also making Allah the witness upon this. So it's a sacred contract. It's a sacred contract. And with every contract, with every agreement, it must be fulfilled. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil uqud. The first verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah, O believers, fulfill your agreements, fulfill your contracts. And you will be asked about every wa'awfu bil ahd, innal ahda kana mas'ula, and you shall be asked about every promise that you make, every contract that you make. You will be asked about it on the day of judgment, whether you were true to it or not, or whether you fulfilled it or not. So this is what nikah is. It's a contract. And we will be questioned about it on the day of judgment, whether we were true to this contract or not. And Allah Ta'ala refers to this contract in the Quran as mithaqan ghalidha, a strong binding contract. This is also important to know that it's not just an ordinary contract, but rather it's a mithaqan ghalidha. Mithaqan ghalidha means a strong binding contract. This is the same word that Allah Ta'ala in the Quran uses for the prophets when He made a divine covenant between to the prophets, and they promised Allah Ta'ala that when they will be sent upon earth and they will give the message to the people, they will fulfill their responsibility. So that agreement between Allah and the prophets that took place of them fulfilling their command of giving the message of Allah to mankind, Allah Ta'ala used the same word mithaqan ghaliza for it. So from here you can understand the sacredness of this bond of nikah. Allah is using the same word for the contract or the agreement He made with prophets, the promise He took from prophets to fulfill their responsibility. Allah Ta'ala used the same word for nikah when two people get married, mithaqan ghalidha, a strong binding contract or a strong binding agreement. So can you understand how important this bond is? How sacred this contract and this agreement is? Allah Ta'ala using the same word that He used for prophets, for their agreement with Him in fulfilling their responsibility. Allah is using the same word. So therefore it shows how important this contract is in the sight of Allah Ta'ala, as well as the fulfillment of the responsibilities of both parties, of both spouses, once they agree to live with one another and agree to marry one another. So this is the meaning of nikah. What is the ruling on nikah? What is the ruling on nikah? Is it an obligation? Is it necessary? Is it recommended? Is it haram or is it makruh? So it depends upon the person and it depends upon the circumstances. So nikah itself, as we know it, we say it's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, don't we? We say it's the sunnah not just of our Prophet, but it's the sunnah of all of the prophets that came before. Every prophet married, apart from Prophet Yahya ﷺ, who is known as John the Baptist in the Christian tradition. He didn't marry, and Allah Ta'ala praises him in the Quran of someone who refrained from marriage, who refrained from women. He's praised for that because of his level of devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Prophet Isa alayhi salam is the other prophet who did not marry, but we know that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, when he will return in his second coming, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, when he will come in his second coming and return near the end of time, he will marry and he will have a family. He will have a family and he will marry. So it's a sunnah of all of the prophets. And in particular, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam, it is also his sunnah. And this is why he said, An-nikahu min sunnati, nikah is from my sunnah. And whoever, faman raghiba an sunnati, whoever abandons my sunnah, falaysa minni, then that person is not from me. That person cannot be from me, i.e. he cannot be my follower if he abandons this. So it is a sunnah and it's highly recommended, it's rewarded. Living in this time, it's very, very important to know this, especially if you're a Muslim. Why? Because there's a lot of people, a lot of Muslim brothers and sisters now who don't want to marry. And there's various reasons for this. One of the reasons for it is they want to enjoy the independent life. They want to enjoy the life that, we've got no responsibilities and we don't want to get burdened with responsibilities and we don't want to get occupied. We like this free life that we're living in and this lifestyle is fine for us. So that's one of the reasons people don't want to get married. Secondly, is probably to do the culture where we're living, because there's a rise of cohabitation, people living together without marriage. And I will tell you honestly, there are so many Muslim brothers and sisters who are living together without marriage. And there's many that have come here for their nikah, or we have been living together for so long, and now we've realized, you know what, we should get married and we're the right people for each other. This is not the culture of Islam. This is not Muslim culture. Cohabitation is not something that Islam approves of, because obviously this type of relationship would be a haram relationship. So there's many who are adopting that culture of cohabitation. And one of the reasons behind cohabitation again comes back to to test and try. Is this person right for me so I can spend the whole life with them? But what they do is they're living like husband and wife. They're living like husband and wife just to see whether it works. And yeah, this is the right person, now we'll get married. All of those years of haram and all of those years of displeasing Allah Ta'ala. And there's many, many other things as a consequence that come out of that. So that's one of the reasons. People don't want to be burdened with that responsibility of committing to each other and want to enjoy the independent lifestyle. Or some people are delaying their marriage so much that we want to have our careers first. They want to, excel, climb the ladder in terms of, being in a high position financially or in terms of their career, work purposes, whatever it is, people are avoiding marriage, and then they're coming to a very later age where they then find it difficult to get married. And that's also happening. So this sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is being abandoned by some people. But alhamdulillah, majority of the people, especially in the Muslim culture, majority of people do get married. But there is becoming a high rise of this, especially amongst the new generation, younger generation and young people. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever revives my sunnah when people are leaving it, then it is as if that person has revived me, and whoever revives me will be with me in Jannah. That's the reward the Prophet ﷺ is mentioning. If you revive my practice, it is as if you've given me life. And if you give me life, i.e. revive my sunnah, then you will be with me in Jannah. That's one of the rewards. And the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned a reward of 100 martyrs. You get a reward of 100 martyrs. How difficult is it for someone to give their life and become a martyr? He said you'll get the reward of 100 martyrs if you revive one practice and one sunnah of mine when people are leaving it. So coming back to what is we said about the ruling on nikah, although it is a sunnah as we know it, but it changes, the ruling of it changes person to person and the circumstances. So this same nikah becomes fard. It becomes an obligation for a person. When it becomes fard, when a person is convinced that they will fall into sin. We are living in a time where there is so much temptation outside. So much temptation. Not just on the streets, but that temptation is in our very own home. And we have these phones, that temptation is right here on the click of a button. If a person is convinced that they're going to fall into sin, they won't be able to protect their chastity and their modesty, and they're going to fall into sin and temptation, then it becomes an obligation. It becomes fard on that person to get married. It becomes fard on that person. If he now does not get married, does not make the effort to get married, it will be sinful. It will be asked about. It will be accountable for it. And the person, now there is another clause to this though, and if you find in the rulings that I mentioned, is that the person is convinced that they will not be oppressive to their spouse. So he's convinced he's going to fall into sin if he doesn't get married, but he's also convinced that he's not going to do dhulm upon the person he gets married to. What does it mean by dhulm? Oppressive, meaning does not fulfill the responsibilities of their spouse, or knows in his nature what his nature is like, that he will be oppressive towards his spouse. Maybe he has a violent nature, maybe has some mental health issues. If he's convinced, that is, with yaqeen, he's certain that he's going to be oppressive, he's not going to be oppressive, then it becomes fard on that person to get married. Yeah, so both things here. Convinced that he's going to fall into sin, if he doesn't get married, and he's convinced that he's not going to do dhulm, he's going to fulfill the responsibilities, it becomes an obligation. So this is for both the man and woman, both for the male and female. When does it become wajib? Wajib is necessary, it's one level below. This is when a person has a fear of falling into sin. He's not certain he'll fall, but he does have this fear. He's treading upon this very fine line. He's scared that he will fall into sin if he doesn't get married. And he also doesn't fear that he will oppress his spouse. So he doesn't have that fear. He's not taking a risk, basically. So that person, it becomes a wajib for that person to get married, because he is fearing that he will fall into sin. So to save yourself from sin, obviously, zina is such a thing that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that when a person commits zina, his iman leaves his heart and it hovers over that person until he stops from that zina. And then that iman returns back into his heart. So it affects a person's faith directly. So we mentioned sunnah. When is it recommended? When a person is in a balanced state, in a moderate state. Meaning the person has the ability to control one's urges, and he also, without fear, he also, he knows that he will be able to fulfill the responsibilities he has, or he or she has, when they get married, and they won't be oppressing their spouse. Oppression actually means to not give the right to someone. Whatever is due to the person as a right, whatever their right is, whatever their haqq is, to not give them the right, this is called dhulm. This is called oppression. So here, this is what we're referring to, that a person fears they will not be able to give the right to their husband and wife, then this is what it is mentioning. So if a person is convinced or knows that they will be able to give their right to their spouse, then it becomes fard, wajib or sunnah. But when does it become haram? Now this is interesting. It becomes haram to get married when a person is convinced of oppressing their spouse. If a person knows as yaqeen that I will not be giving my fulfilling the right of my spouse, or there is a condition with that person, knows that I'll do zulm upon this person if I get married, even if that person has intense urges to marry, even if they have intense urges to marry. So what we understand from here is zulm is a far greater crime than zina. I'm not encouraging people to commit zina. What I'm saying is zulm is a far greater crime. So let's look at in this sense, when someone gets married, but they do zulm upon their spouse, they wrong their spouse, they don't fulfill their responsibilities, they don't give them the due right that they have, how much of a sin are they committing? Can you understand that? If someone who has the intense urges to marry but is convinced he'll do zulm upon his spouse, it's haram for them to get married. Can you understand that? How important it is when you get married to fulfill your responsibilities towards each other and give each other the due right. And lastly, it's makruh, is disliked to get married when a person has a fear they will be oppressive to their spouse, even if they have intense desire to marry. So again, it comes back to the zulm and the risk factor, that he fears he will be oppressive because a person knows themselves what they like, what their nature is like. And this also goes for those parents, for example, who knowing well regarding their children, regarding their son or daughter, that my son, for example, they know that he's going to do zulm upon his spouse because of his mental state, because of his violent nature, or because of whatever condition is, and then they get that person married off, this is also zulm. Those parents then will be held accountable. There are some people whom I know or have seen, they have children who are severely disabled, severely, but they go and get them married. You probably know someone as well, they take them Pakistan or somewhere and get them married. This is zulm on the other, on the daughter of that family, or on that girl. It's zulm. Severely disabled, is not able to fulfill the rights of the wife. So those parents will be questioned on the Day of Judgment. You knew well. So that's why these are things that we must consider. What is the purpose of nikah? So what is the purpose of nikah? First of all, recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qudrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He mentions that marriage and nikah is from amongst His signs. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ is from amongst His signs. أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions this is from His qudrah. He created you and He created from amongst you your spouses. So wherever Allah ta'ala mentions that this is from amongst His signs, it always refers to His creating power. It all refers to His qudrah. It refers to His very existence. That reflect upon it, when you reflect upon this important institution, it should take you back to what? That Allah exists. Reflect upon it, Allah exists. So it's to recognize the qudra of Allah Ta'ala. And obviously how the first marriage that took place between humans was who? Our mother and father, the mother and father of the entire human race, Adam alayhi salam, Prophet Adam alayhi salam, and Sayyidah Hawa salamullahi alayha, Lady Hawa, Adam and Eve. Their marriage was the first marriage that took place in Jannah. And how did that take place? Again, it refers back to the qudra of Allah Ta'ala. And obviously when you get married, you protect and complete half of your deen. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned when people get married, or when two people get married, they complete half of their deen. They complete half of their religion. So this is also important to know. Why? Because I often say this as well, nowadays marriage is seen just as something that will just come in your life, or they treat it as a game. They don't take it seriously. Even now people think, all right, we'll get married, we'll test it, we'll see if it works, if it doesn't, no problems. No, when you get married, you're completing half of your deen. So it's part of your faith, it's part of our religion. And then fear Allah for the next half. So when you do get married, you attain pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. So that's the main maqsad, first and foremost. Secondly, we're fulfilling great sunnah of the prophets. Number 3, you're protecting your modesty, you're protecting yourself from sin. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, oh young people, if you can marry, then marry. This will protect your chastity, your purity and your modesty. And if you cannot, then fast. Now why did the Prophet ﷺ link fasting here? Fasting is one of the best ways in suppressing one's urges and one's desires. And you can experience this in the month of Ramadan. When you fast, what happens? One, physically, your urges are suppressed. You don't have those urges when you're fasting, during fasting. And spiritually, through fasting, it gives you this taqwa. It gives you this ability to recognize the fact and become conscious that Allah is watching you all the time. Allah is seeing what you're doing. And that's something as an exercise we learn through fasting. So when you're fasting, this helps. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if you cannot marry and you have urges to marry, then what? Fast. This will help you to protect yourself. The next 3 things are also very important. What is the purpose of nikah? Preservation of family and the preservation of lineage and preservation of religion. These 3 things are actually what we call as the maqasid of Sharia. The purpose of Islam and the purpose of Islamic law. The purpose of Sharia, there are 5 particular maqasid that the ulama recognize. The scholars say there's 5 particular maqasid of Sharia. In marriage, you are fulfilling 3 of them. What is that? One is protection of and preservation of family. This institution of family is so important in society. And again, we're living in a time where, this institution is slowly diminishing and finishing. Family isn't given importance anymore. So preservation of family, nikah, is a manifestation of that. How do you preserve the family unit? Again, there's a whole lecture we can do on this, why family is so important, especially a healthy family in which when children will grow up in that family, a healthy family, where they are both spouses who are involved in that family. There's many benefits of that, psychological, physical, emotional. Again, this is a complete subject, but I don't have time to go through all of that. So preservation of family, preservation of lineage. Nikah again is an institution where we are fulfilling this maqsad of Sharia as well, the preservation of one's nasab, one's lineage. Through marriage, you know who are your parents. And then when you get married, your children will know who their parents are. We are again living in a time and in a culture where there's many who don't even know who their fathers are, many who don't even know who their mothers are. So again, the preservation of lineage is not there. If marriage is not there, this institution is not there, it becomes very difficult to work. Although we have DNA, there is this tool that is used in order to work out the DNA testing and to know who, whose child. But this again is, it's said it's 99% accurate. 1% is not accurate. There's still this 1% possibility that it's not right. There's still 1% doubt, even though 99% is correct. With Islam, you have to be 100% correct, not 99%. Yeah? There are these tools to help. But what is happening, it affects the family, the unit is such, it builds a community. It builds a society. When family unit becomes weak and these things are not preserved, it affects not just that one family, it affects the whole of society. It affects the whole community. So this is another maqsad of Sharia, preservation of lineage, and this is also what we find in nikah. And the third thing is preservation of religion. This is also a maqsad of Sharia, to preserve religion. How do you preserve religion? When the parents will pass on their values to their children, pass on their faith to their children pass on to their children. This is preservation of religion. And this, you can see marriage is also an institution that facilitates that, preserving the religion and the deen until the Day of Judgment. Procreate to contribute towards the continuation of the human race. This is also important. Allah Ta'ala has made this institution to what? To, continue the human race, so that the human race doesn't become extinct. It continues. But it's not just about bringing children into the world, it's also about their upbringing, it's also about to give them the tarbiyah and the whole environment in order for them to grow healthy. So preservation, family, lineage and religion. And also procreate to contribute towards human race. Peace and tranquil life, and this is the last point that I want to just focus on this. What is the purpose of nikah? Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Quran that the purpose of marriage is sukoon. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. So that you may find tranquility, you may find sukoon and sakina. And that's the purpose of marriage, sukoon. Peace. And often again, I say this, there's a lot of people because of, the phone calls that we get and people that come to see us and the experience of certain people, there's no sukoon in the family. And there's, again, various reasons for that. Various reasons why there's no sukoon. And you can speak about this for hours as well. People don't take marriage seriously. There's no barakah in there because some of the spiritual elements are missing. The intention by which people came into this marriage, they were not correct. The intention wasn't right in the beginning. So there's no sukoon in that family. They're not fulfilling each other's responsibilities. Again, there's no sukoon. The way that they behave towards each other, conduct, the other external factors that also affect the family, maybe because of in-laws, parents, whatever, siblings, all of these things, they're all factors, internal, external factors. They affect, and there's no sukoon. But this is again something that, how do you bring sukoon? People have to bring it. People have to bring it in the family. So it depends on the people, it depends on the individual. So the purpose of nikah is sukoon. So every single person who gets married has to try from themselves as much as they can to bring about sukoon in their life. And this is the purpose of nikah that Allah Ta'ala mentions, taskunu ilayha. Okay, who are the mahrams, the unmarriageable kin, who we can't get married to? Both the man and woman, they have certain people whom they cannot get married to. They are known as the mahrams. Okay, when we say mahram, you often hear this word when people are going to Umrah or Hajj. And you hear sisters, who is my mahram that I can go with on Umrah or Hajj? It means those people whom it is forbidden for you to get married to, they are your mahram. Okay? There's a whole list, but if you want to look at that list, you can refer back to the Holy Quran, the last verse of the fourth juz, the fourth sipara, the last verse. This is where Allah Ta'ala talks about those people from your relatives that are, or people that you cannot get married to. Now there's three ways in which people become haram for marriage. One is bloodline, because of blood relation. Second is because of rada'at, which means through fostering or through suckling. So if you have, for example, the same mother who suckled you, even though you weren't born from the same mother, but you're not related through blood, but you're related through milk, you're related through suckling. So this is, again, makes that relationship haram between you to get married. So you can't marry your brother or sister through suckling. And number three, the third way in which relationships become haram, you cannot get married to that person, is through marriage. So your, for example, father-in-law, mother-in-law, you cannot get married to them because of marriage. Or your sister-in-law, whilst you are married to her sister. Again, this would be, she would be someone whom you cannot get married to. But she will still remain a non-mahram for you, because if you divorce the sister and after iddah period her sister, then you can get married. But that is a temporary forbidden relationship. However, these are the three ways in which someone becomes mahram, completely forbidden forever, and this is through three ways. One is blood relation, second is through fostering or suckling, and number three is through marriage. So this list here, I've actually done both for the man and the woman. So for example, I've written in the first one, mothers, and this is obviously for the boy, the man, you cannot marry your own mother, you cannot marry your grandmother, and similarly, for the girl, she cannot marry her father nor her grandfather. So that's completely, clear. Again, daughters, granddaughters, sons and grandsons. So the way I've made the list is for both the man and the woman, that they cannot marry these sisters, brothers, half brothers and half sisters, those who share the same parent, because they will also be mahrams for one another because they share the same parent. Paternal aunties, paternal uncles, meaning brothers and sisters of your father. Yeah, so we say chacha, or we say pupo. Yeah, so they will be the haram relations that you cannot. They are your mahrams. Maternal aunties, maternal uncles, so these are from the mother's side, so brothers and sisters of the mother. Sons and daughters of siblings, so nephews and nieces, even if they're of half brothers and half sisters. So even if they're your half nephews or nieces, then they will also be from your mahram. Foster mothers, as I mentioned before. Foster father, who is the husband of the foster mother, they will also be from your mahram. And the list goes on, so I don't want to spend too much time upon this. If you want to have a look, then the last ayat of the fourth sipara. If anyone knows the ayat from the top of the head. 23. Ayat number 23 of Surah An-Nisa, of the fourth ayat, inshallah. Okay, so when you have a nikah ceremony, what happens on the nikah ceremony and what are the requirements for it? So I've skipped out, all the, what we call the engagement and, looking for a spouse. I've skipped all that out because I don't think we'll have enough time for that. So we're just gone, towards the Islamic nikah ceremony. What is essential for the nikah ceremony? So what you need, and the reason why this is also important, because as I mentioned, when we go to conduct nikah ceremonies, people are unaware of what to do, how to do, and they're asking on the day, is there anything I have to say, is there anything I have to read? what is it I have to do, what is the requirement. So obviously we do tell them beforehand, look, you need minimum, these are the things that you require. You need witnesses, what is the haq meher, are you going to stipulate it there and then? Is it deferred, is it non-deferred? So all of these things people need to be aware of. So first of all, for the Islamic nikah ceremony, nikah cannot be done without witnesses. So minimum requirement for witnesses is 2. Again, a confusion sometimes occurs. People have in their mind, you need 4 witnesses. You only need 2 witnesses, either 2 males or 1 male and 2 female. Okay, so if there's only 1 male witness and you don't have another male witness, then it should be 2 female witnesses, because again, this is from the Holy Quran. And because it's a contract, it's an aqd, and in contracts, and there is also a financial element of it in terms of the haq meher, therefore 1 male and 2 females. But the 4 witnesses, bear in mind, 4 witnesses are required for criminal cases. Okay, 4 witnesses are required for criminal cases. Here, these 2 witnesses are the minimum requirement for contracts and agreements or any financial transactions. Okay, so because this is an aqd, therefore it's a contract, you only need minimum 2 witnesses, 2 male witnesses, or 1 male and 2 female witnesses. Ijab and qabul, again for witnesses, it doesn't have to be both people from one side. Recommended is 1 from each side. That's recommended. So if there isn't a witness from one side, it can be from, like for example, the groom side, you can have 2 witnesses from there. Or if the groom doesn't have witnesses, you can have 2 witnesses from the bride side. But recommended is 1 from each, just to avoid any sort of contention between the families. Oh, I wanted my so-and-so to be a witness, and the other one says, no, I wanted my. These should be figured out beforehand. Okay? So you can have both witnesses from one side. It doesn't matter. The minimum requirement is 2. It's not 4, because it's not a criminal case. Okay? So ijab and qabul, this is an integral part of nikah. What's ijab and qabul? Ijab and qabul, in English they translate it as exchange of vows. Yeah, but here obviously we don't exchange vows in the sense that we have a whole list of vows here. If someone wants to write a contract, they can do. Certain conditions, this is the contract for my nikah, marrying this person, he has to fulfill this, this and this, she has to fulfill this, this and this, and then they sign it. That's a like they say, a prenuptial agreement. That can take place. But at the time of nikah, it's called ijab and qabul. This is done in various ways as well. But the most common way that offer and acceptance is done is through someone, through the imam, right? That's the most common way, and this is probably the most best way in doing it as well, through someone who has a social standing in the community or a spiritual standing in the community, just for barakah purposes. This is the best way to do it. But the ijab and qabul can be done in various ways. Even the guardian of the bride, for example, the guardian, the wali, even they can do the ijab and qabul in the presence of witnesses. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that is appointed as an agent between them. But best practice is done via someone else, especially someone who is an imam or someone, so that they can perform it correctly, properly. There's no issues afterwards, because there's a lot of ignorance now. So it's better to get it done from someone who has the knowledge and knows. So this is an integral part, ijab and qabul. And I'm going to come on to ijab and qabul later on. What words are to be said, what's not to be said. And whenever obviously we conduct nikah as well, sometimes the bride is silent, or she's told, don't say anything, just be silent. Again, these are things that, are they consent, are they not consent? So this is also important to know on the day as well. The other important thing is a wali of a woman. So for the bride, you have a wali, which is the guardian.
And who are the male guardians? They are in order of inheritance. So again, the tartib, in the next slide, we're going to look at the walis. Now, you have to bear this in mind as well. In the Hanafi school, in the Hanafi school, which majority of us follow, the Hanafi school of law, the guardian is, if the bride is very young, if the bride is very young, she's not very mature, she cannot make her own decisions, right? She cannot make her own decisions independently, then it is necessary for her to have a wali present. Someone who is mature, someone who is of an age where they're able to make their own independent decisions, knows from right and wrong, is able to make their independent decisions. For them in the Hanafi school, the wali is not a condition. The wali being present is not, however, we do recommend it. We do say that it is better for you to have your wali for blessings purposes. Or if anything is to go wrong for your own protection, it is better for the wali to be present. In the other three schools of law, the Shafi'i, Maliki and the Hanbali, in them it's a condition for a wali. Without a wali, the nikah is not valid in the other three schools of law. So if someone is a Shafi'i, if someone is a Maliki or Hanbali, so for example, if you're going to marry a sister who's Shafi'i, Maliki or Hanbali, know in your thing that she will not be able to get married without her wali being present or without the wali's consent. Okay? And that's only the flexibility in the Hanafi school of thought. Vakil, but we do strongly recommend whenever someone comes to it, that do have your guardian's permission, your father, grandfather, whoever is your wali, do have their consent or have them present for blessings. So vakil, this is another person who is the representative. So if there is no wali there is someone who acts on behalf of the wali, someone who is appointed. So for example, the father cannot make it or is in a different country, so he appoints someone. So he's appointed, for example, the uncle, or he's appointed someone who has a social standing in the community, who's respected, an elder. He makes him an agent. He says, you're my vakil, you act on my behalf. Sometimes the imam is given the responsibility. I want you to act as the vakil on my behalf. So the vakil also can conduct the nikah in that way. So even if an imam is not present, but you've appointed someone as a vakil, that vakil can now ask the bride's consent and the groom's consent that so-and-so has given me this responsibility. Do you accept so-and-so in your nikah in the presence of these witnesses? So the vakil can also do that. Or you have an aqid, the one who makes the contract, or the contractor. The aqid can also be the imam. And then another integral part of the nikah is the khutbah. There's a khutbah that's given, and this khutbah is masnoon, this khutbah is sunnah. Dowry, this is the mahr that is stipulated, or the mahr that is agreed between people. This is the bridal gift that is agreed between both parties. And the mahr is actually a what? It's the right of the bride, it's the right of the wife, the haq mahr. In regards to mahr, inshallah, there's details in the next slide, so we're going to do that. So recommended to hold nikah in the masjid on the day of Jummah. This is obviously sunnah and recommended. Mehndi and engagement parties are not part of Islamic nikah. They are cultural, and some of these can become unlawful due to involvement of particular prohibited activities. And we know certain things that do take place on engagements and nikah parties that can make those gatherings haram as well as disliked and unlawful. So it should be avoided to do those. If these are going to take place, then obviously you have to take into consideration the Sharia in order to do that. But these are cultural, these are not Islamic ceremonies. The awliya, who are the walis, who can be the wali, order of inheritance. Okay, so there's a whole list of who that is. So the first person who has a right, if the woman was married before and she either became widowed or divorced, and she has a son who is of a sane, who is of an adult age, then the son has the priority of being the wali of the bride. Okay, that's only if she has a son and she is divorced or she is widowed, then the son will be the first person to have priority, unless he gives that right to someone older. Then after, the grandson, if the lady has a grandson and has no son, then he will have the right, and further down. Number 3, father. The father then has the right to be the wali after son and grandson, unless they say, look, I want my father too, and they give that right over. Grandfather, after the father is grandfather and further up. After father, grandfather, if they are not present, then the wali is either the brother or half brother, those that have a common father. So if the bride has a half brother, so they share a same parent, then that would be the wali. Son of brother and half son of half brother with common father, again nephew or a half nephew. Paternal uncle, this refers to the full brother or half brother of the father. So we say chacha, don't we, or taya, chacha or taya, yeah. Again, if it's full brother or half brother of the father. Son of paternal uncle, so this is referring to the cousin of the bride. Again, so the uncle who is the brother of the father, so his nephew can also be a wali. And if there is no wali present from the paternal side, from the father's side, then what will happen is the guardian will be from the maternal side. After this, there will be, the mame and, the mamus and the maternal relatives, if there are no paternal relatives. If they have no wali, if they have no one, then the guardianship will fall upon the state or the qadi, the judge. Okay, so it will fall upon this. So this is why you will also find in the Islamic history, when there is no wali, the khalifa then acts as the wali for that bride. So even the imam can act as a wali if there is no relative present as a wali. Forced arranged marriages, I don't want to go into this now because we don't have much time, but you have to understand forced marriage is completely prohibited. Forced and arranged, there's a difference between them. In our culture, we know everything is arranged. Marriages are arranged. What it means is the whole process is arranged. And you find sometimes these, or most oftenly, these are the most, successful marriages. And in our culture, everything is arranged. The time's arranged, the meeting place is arranged, the venue is arranged, meeting up with the family is arranged. All of these things are. Forced is different. Forced is where the bride or groom have no say whatsoever. They have to say yes, sir, and that's it. That is forced. They got no say in it whatsoever. And they are forced to get married. This is completely prohibited in Islam. Completely prohibited. The Quran is clear on that. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ أَن تَرِثُوا النِّسَاءَ, that do not force or forcefully inherit women. Complete injunction of the Quran. Clear prohibition in Surah An-Nisa. Let's go into the consent. Okay, so the consent of the bride, this is very important, especially for our sisters and for the walis. So you'll have two types of brides. One is those who are young and those who have not been married before. Then you have those who are of a, who are mature, and those who have been married before. So either they've been divorced or they've been widowed. Their consent differs. When they give their consent, it will differ. So for example, someone who has been unmarried and she is young and she doesn't have much, life experiences. For her, when she is asked for her consent, if she remains silent,
If she remains silent, then it will be taken as consent. It will be taken as consent. If she remains silent, that means she's given her consent. Because one of the things that is taken from that is because she may be shy to say anything in front of her wali, her guardian, out of respect, she might not. So silence will be taken as consent. So for our sisters, if they're unhappy with the marriage, know that if you remain silent, it will be taken as consent. Okay. Secondly, if she smiles or giggles or laughs without sarcasm. So if she smiles, that is also will be taken as consent. But if there's sarcasm in it, right? If she like mockingly does it, and for example, if you ask the consent, like there's this sarcasm in it, or laughs like, you will be able to tell whether that is a genuine laugh or smile or whether it's not. If she does it with sarcasm, then this will not be consent. But if she only smiles and giggles, then this will be, without sarcasm, it will be taken as consent. Or if she expresses consent with words or gestures, so if she says it, obviously that's clear, or if she gestures, even if she nods her head, or even if with her hand she gestures in a way to say that she accepts, then this will be taken as consent. But if she cries, if she cries without making a noise, like, if she cries very profusely, right, or wailing, then this will not be consent, because this will show that she's not happy. But if she cries out of happiness, it's only tears, and it's not any noise with it, any wailing with it, then this will be taken as consent. This will mean it is consent. However, if a wali other than the father and grandfather take a consent of a bakira means someone who's not unmarried, who's been unmarried from before, then her consent must be with words. So if other than the wali, father and grandfather, if the father or grandfather take the consent, then the above 4 things that we've mentioned, they will be taken into account. But if other than the father and grandfather take the consent, then she must express it with words. If she doesn't, then that nikah will not be valid. Does that make sense? And for a divorced or a widowed woman, her consent will only be valid with expressions or words. If she remains silent, it will not be consent. She has to say it if she's been married before, because she's been through that experience. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, let's quickly go to Mahr. How much time do we have, Afsar? Okay. The Haq Mahr, we've only got 3 minutes. Would you like to carry on after Maghrib, or is this enough for you? Is enough? Yeah. You sure? Should we have a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's less than half. What we can do, we can go into this next week, just in the beginning, and then we'll do the Talaq Masail. But the dowry one is important, so I'm just going to briefly in 2 minutes finish this. The Mahr, this is important, the bridal gift. Now this is the right of the bride. So this is her right, okay? So she can demand what she likes. This is her right. However, out of respect, obviously, the family is due, and this depends on the culture of the family as well. But we often get asked, what is the minimum and what is the maximum, right? Minimum is 10 dirham. Minimum is 10 dirham. Maximum, there's no limit. There's no limit to the maximum. But when people ask us, what is the minimum? We say to them, look, minimum in this day and age has no value, because 10 dirham now is about 30 pounds. Okay, has no value whatsoever. 30 pounds is nothing, or even below that. It depends on what the value of silver is nowadays. Value of silver nowadays, which I checked, I think, about a week ago, it was about 70 pence. 1 gram of silver is about 70 pence. All right, so 10 dirham is going to be around that much. It's going to be around 30, 40 pounds. So there's no value for the minimum. So what we do say to them is, look, agree on something between each other as families, what you think will be reasonable and something of value, right? If they can't reach any agreement, then there's two things we say to them. One is either you go for mahar mithal. What is mahar mithal? Mahar mithal is in your family, the women that got married in your family, i.e., the lady who will be getting married, her sisters, her aunties, or whatever, the women in that family, what was their dowries? What was the average that they got? What was their dowry? Then keep it similar. This is called mahar mithal. Or the second we say to them is mahar fatimi. So some people say, what is the sunnah? We say, look, the sunnah differs. The Prophet ﷺ gave different mahar to his different wives. So it differs. So what we say is, okay, let's go for mahar fatimi then, which is the Prophet ﷺ most beloved daughter, the youngest and the most virtuous of them all, Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha. What was the dowry between her and Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhul kareem? There are three different numbers that we find. Either 400 dirham, 480 dirham, or 500. Because what it comes in the different narrations is that it was between 400 and 500 dirham. So 400 would be the minimum from there and 500 maximum. So how much would that be? If we take it, 400 dirham is 1,224 grams of silver. If it's 480 dirham, 1,469.66, if you want to round it off, 1,470 grams of silver, or 1,530.9, or if you want to round it off, 1,531 grams of silver. Obviously, you have to look at what is the current value of silver of 1 gram. So if you work that out, if you go for 1,531, 500 dirham, it will be, or if you want to look at it between 400 and 500, so you're looking at between 800 to 1,000. This will be your mahar fatimi in current value, looking at what the value of silver, and whether you want to go for 400 dirham or 500 or anything in between, you are looking around between 800 to around 1,000, or even a bit more than that, around 1,100 pounds. That would be your mahar fatimi as mahar. But there is no stipulated mahar by the Prophet ﷺ. His different, the dowries were different, and I listed all of them here. The different wives, what they received as mahar from the Prophet ﷺ as dowry. One of them, Sayyidah Habiba radiallahu anha, she was given 4,000 dirhams. So this works out 14,472 grams of silver. So her dowry was quite high, because the king of the time, Najashi, the Abyssinian king, he was the one who gifted that for the Prophet ﷺ, or made arrangements for that marriage for the Prophet ﷺ. So that's in terms of the mahar. But this is important, that this needs to be given to the bride. So inshallah we leave it here, and we will continue on this from next week. If there's anyone who wants to ask questions, we can inshallah come back after Maghrib and we can take your questions. Is that okay? I did say I'll try my best, but inshallah, as much as we've covered, may Allah Ta'ala accept it, and Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand this. Jazakumullahu khairan wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Taqreeban, ji.
Salatu wassalamu alayka ya Sayyidi ya Rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Sayyidi ya Rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رحمة للعالمين وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا شفيع المذنبين. الله أكبر الله الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت سيدنا محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعته يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا حبيب الله الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
So صفوفكم وعددوا رحمكم الله. Please straighten your rows. Do not leave any gaps in between. صفون درس فرمالي. هليجكم بركة. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. يا أيها الناس الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا وآتوا اليتامى أموالهم ولا تتبدلوا الخبيث بالطيب ولا تأكلوا أموالهم إلى أموالكم إنه كان حوبا كبيرا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله الله أكبر استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم آمين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك ربنا وتعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم النبيين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. نفوض أمورنا إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد. اللهم سهل أمورنا يا رب العالمين. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Inshallah, we will be continuing with our Essentials of Nikah lecture. If anyone was participating or wants to participate, please make your way to the middle hall, inshallah.
Basically, Islam doesn't completely throw out cultural practices of a people. It accommodates it as long as it's in accordance with the principles of Sharia. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in a hadith, whatever is good with the people is good with Allah. So if there is a good practice and there is something which is deemed good by people, then that is good with Allah Ta'ala, as long as it doesn't completely violate a injunction of Sharia or goes against the principles of the deen. Yeah. So every culture, every people have their own way of doing things. Yeah. So for example, when the Prophet ﷺ came into the Arabian society, there were a lot of cultures that were taking place. The Prophet ﷺ didn't stop all of them. Only those things that were against Islam, the Prophet ﷺ stopped.
those things that were in accordance, or those things that didn't violate the principles of the deen, but they were culture of the people, it was accepted. It was taken into account. For example, Aqiqah, the celebration, or the Aqiqah that is done, this was even before the announcement of the Prophet ﷺ's prophethood. His own Aqiqah was also done at the age of 7 days by his grandfather. The Prophet never repeated his Aqiqah in the way that because his grandfather already given it. Do you understand? So Aqiqah is also something that was cultural, but it was adopted. So there are certain things that are cultural practices that the Prophet ﷺ did not completely prohibited. Yes, if they were against the principles of the deen, or completely violate something, then it was forbidden. So for example, if you have a family that gets together just to within themselves have an expression of gratitude, expression of happiness, they get together for a meal or something, or if two people have got engaged and the two families, they want to express their happiness on this engagement, as long as there's nothing haram going on in that, it's completely fine. Do you understand? Because what is engagement? Engagement is a commitment, a promise that's made. Obviously, when two people, two families, they come, they visit each other's houses to make that, they say gal pakki, they made it a thingy. When they've agreed, yes, we commit to this, the expression of happiness on that, sometimes, the family is hospitable. For their guests, they prepare food. Sometimes people take a few more guests with them just to be present there. There's no harm in that, as long as there's nothing taking place which is haram. So for example, some of the things that go on, the free mixing, the dancing and all of this, as long as that doesn't happen. If that happens, then that party will be regarded as not permissible. Same thing with Mendi. Obviously, mainly that's for sisters, but nowadays, obviously, what takes place, what happens, because of those extra things that are happening, the free mix and all of that, the dancing, all of these things, then it makes it impermissible. But if it was just a gathering of sisters who come together to express their happiness as a cultural practice and is not violating any Shari principle, then as a culture it will be accepted. Does that make sense? Yeah. But obviously you have to look at all the other things as well, like, the extravagance, the spending and all of that has to be taken into account as well. Yeah. As long as it's not a waste of. Walima ji. Walima ji. Wajib hai na? Walima wajib hai. Everything अपनी हैसियत के मुताबिक है, should be. जी अपनी हैसियत के मुताबिक हो ना, ये ना हो कि कर्जे ले के. Some people do that. They take out loans just to, for their marriage. This is extravagance. The point of a walima is we were going to come to that today, but we didn't have time. The purpose of the walima is to announce the wedding to everyone, because at the time of nikah you might not have everyone there, because the minimum requirement is what? 2 witnesses and the wali, and sometimes people do it more in their own home privately. Walima is more for everyone, for the public, for friends, family. It's an expression of happiness coming together. Secondly, the purpose is to announce your marriage. Yeah, so that people know that you got married. So no one can accuse you tomorrow that you're not married. Do you understand? गरीबों को भी दे सकते हैं, yeah. जी जी जी. आप दे सकते हैं, उसमें कोई ऐसा नहीं है, और ये भी अच्छी चीज़ है गरीबों को खिलाना,
लेकिन दूसरा मकसद वलीमा का क्या है? मकसद वलीमा का ये है कि आप जो खुशी है उस शादी की, वो अपने जो फैमिली वाले हैं, दोस्त अजीज़ हैं, जो आपके करीबी हैं, आप खुशी का इजहार करते हैं वलीमे के ज़रिए। यस, तो उसका फिर ज़ाहिर है जब लोग आते हैं, आप मेहमान नवाजी भी होती है। और हुज़ूर नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम खुद सुन्नत मुबारक ये थी कि उन्होंने खाना भी तकसीम किया, उन्होंने लोगों की दावत दी, खाना दिया। तो हुज़ूर की सुन्नत ये है कि लोगों को खिलाना। अब दूसरा ये है कि हुज़ूर नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम का फरमान भी ये है कि जिस वलीमे पे गरीब को दावत नहीं है तो वो वलीमा जो है उसमें वो खैर वाला नहीं है, उसमें कोई बरकत नहीं है। जी जी, तो उस पर गरीब भी आने चाहिए। जी 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 जी। Yeah, English. So the question was whether, we give that for the walima, we give the money to the poor, and we don't, is it okay if we don't feed people? And the answer to that is this is good that you give that to the poor people. Obviously, this is charity. However, the purpose of walima is what? To express your happiness in your family, your locality, your people. And the sunnah of the Prophet was to invite everyone to have that, to come together and then be too hospitable as a feast. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that do a walima even if you have to give one sheep. Even if you give one sheep, have a walima. So the wedding feast is something which is masnoon from our Prophet ﷺ to have the feast. But to express happiness and gratitude, it becomes wajib. But every वलीमा the poor should also be invited. तो उसकी जो आप कह रहे थे ना, अगर गरीब को नहीं बुलाया, मिसाल के तौर यहाँ आपको गरीब नहीं मिला, तो उसकी कुछ जो रकम है वो दे दे। हाँ, so some of that रकम, some of that you give, not complete, इसलिए क्योंकि आपने वो हुज़ूर नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम का ये खुद एक मसनून तरीका है, उसको पूरा करना है आपने। जी। Okay. Anything else? Yeah, the duff is permitted, yeah, because this used to happen even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Like for example, there was a particular qabila, particular tribe, they were known for entertainment. So the Prophet ﷺ, if I can remember, he was told that there's a wedding of so and so, and the Prophet ﷺ said that, oh, there are people who hold this particular entertainment. And there's one particular occasion, I'm saying this on top of my head, so I'll have to find the reference afterwards. There was one particular instance where I remember that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned whilst being in the presence of a wedding that where is the, you people play the duff, where is the duff for this entertainment? So meaning on occasions and celebrations, we find it from the sunnah of our Prophet or from the Prophet ﷺ that playing the duff and on occasions of celebration is permitted. So even on Eid, we find it happened, and also on a wedding that it happened. But that doesn't mean that the way that the music that is played nowadays in the weddings, that would be permitted. Obviously the love songs and all of that, that's no. Okay? Nasheeds, yes. Praises of the Prophet ﷺ, all of that, yeah, that would be permitted. Okay? Anything? जहेज का यहाँ लिखा हुआ है जी, इसमें आना था, yeah. So जहेज basically is utensils of furniture provided by the bride's family. It's अगर parents give from their own will, अपनी तरफ से माँ बाप दें बेटी को, तो बिल्कुल जायज़ है, लेकिन जो लड़के वाले हैं वो डिमांड नहीं कर सकते They can't demand, the boy's side cannot demand the bride's side that we want this much jahez. No. If the parents themselves give from their own goodwill to their daughter as a gift for her new home, then this is permissible. But the other side cannot demand that you have to give this. The demand is only of mahar, and that demand is from the bride's side. So this, although it's a cultural practice, but because in this cultural practice there's a lot of oppression. We find jahez even in the Prophet ﷺ's Mubarak life. When Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha was married, the Prophet ﷺ gave her some things for her home. So this is jahez, but it wasn't demanded. Do you understand? So it's the demand element from the other side which is not permissible. No, it's no requirement. If he wants to out of his own will, good gesture, yeah, but it's not a requirement. The mahar is for the bride. Yeah. So he doesn't have to give to everyone. Yeah. Mahar ka? दरअसल जो महर है ना वो तो हक है, लेकिन हुजूर नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने हर चीज़ में एतदाल रखा है. He's kept moderation in everything. जब महर का भी आया था ना तो हुजूर नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने ये इरशाद फरमाया कि जो हाई महर, excessive महर, do not stipulate excessive महर, ज़्यादा डिमांड ना करें for high. The Prophet also mentioned this. तो हर चीज़ में एतदाल हो, अगले की भी आपने इस्तिताअत देखनी है. Whatever is the ability of the person, capacity of that should be taken into consideration. ये शुरू में ही ना ये चीज़ें जो हैं ये फिर बाद में फसाद इससे पड़ता है in families, and this is one of the reasons. जी जी Yeah. Some of those things, ये जो कुछ चीज़ें हैं, we've adopted from the Hindus. हिंदुओं से ये चीज़ें हमने लिए हैं from the Sikh tradition and from the Hindu, because we stayed together. So some of these things are from there, and because we mix these things, ये mix हो गए, इसलिए हमारी भी अब शादियों में वो बरकत नहीं रही. जी 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 हर चीज़ में एतदाल हो. Yeah. Anything else? नहीं, ठीक है. Anyone get married soon? Inshallah. Okay, inshallah. Inshallah. So next week we'll continue from here. We'll talk about there's some detail left on mahar. We have walima, and we also have those marriages which are prohibited, roles and responsibilities, and then we're going to go into talaq, inshallah. So it'll lead on to the talaq, inshallah. Next week we'll try give a bit more time if we need to, inshallah. Yes. खुला भी है इसमें, इंशाल्लाह, वो भी इंशाल्लाह. जी 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 ये जितनी भी है ना इंशाल्लाह इसको कवर करेंगे. ओके. आमीन. अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह रब्बिल आलमीन वस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला रसूलिल करीम व अला आलिहि व अस्हाबिहि अजमईन. रब्बना ज़लमना अनफुसना व इन लम तग़फिर लना व तरहमना लनकूनन्ना मिनल ख़ासिरीन. रब्बना आतिना फ़िद दुनिया हसना व फ़िल आखिरति हसनतन व क़िना अज़ाबन नार. अल्लाहुम्मा इन्ना अला ज़िक्रिका व शुक्रिका व हुस्नि इबादतिक. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا وادخلنا في رحمتك وأنت أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وقلبا خاشعا وتوبة نصوحا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum, Ya Rabbal Alamin. Accept our Ya Allah discourse. Oh Allah, accept our time that we spent in the masjid. Ya Allah, accept our learning and our teaching, Ya Allah. Whatever mistakes we may have made during this, Ya Allah, please forgive us.
Bless each and every single one of us, O Allah. Ya Allah, allow us to increase our knowledge in those things which are important for us. Keep us away from all types of shar and evil, O Allah. Protect us from all types of fitan, O Allah. Protect us from all types of sins, O Allah. Ya Allah, those who are unmarried and they are wishing to get married, Ya Allah, make it easy for them. Those who are finding it difficult to find their life partners, Ya Allah, grant them the best and Ya Allah, compatible spouses and life partners, O Allah. Ya Allah, those who are married, Ya Allah, grant them the tawfiq to remain married and keep their marriage intact. Ya Allah, protect their marriages from all types of fitan, all types of fasad, all types of shar. Protect them from the insinuations and the waswas of the shayateen, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, allow them to fulfill their marital responsibilities towards each other, O Allah. Ya Allah, bring about sukoon and tranquility in everyone's families, in everyone's marital lives. Ya Allah, grant them sukoon and tranquility in their families. Ya Allah, grant us sukoon in our neighborhood, in our communities and in our society. And ultimately in the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allow us to live upon Islam, die upon Iman. Allow us to embrace the beautiful sunnah of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and adopt his beautiful character and seerah. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. جزاكم